Living so close to the college campus had its advantages. One could have more action exposure to live events than they usually would living in the suburbs. And, most importantly, their options for low-cost real estate were quite attractive, but the noise was sometimes unbearable. Tonight was one of those nights that made Alex Burke second-guess his chosen location. He had lucked out getting into his apartment building. His roommate was not the cleanest person then, and Alex had grown tired of sharing his space. The landlord, who also happened to be his best friend, had told him the apartment was initially rented to a young couple. The girlfriend allegedly cheated, leading to a split-up, resulting in them breaking their lease. Alex wondered how he knew so much about the couple's business. Nevertheless, his landlord/best friend needed someone in the apartment as soon as possible, and that someone turned out to be Alex. Even though it got noisy, to him it was a fair trade-off from his previous living conditions. "It's 2:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, for the love of God," he muttered to himself. Since it wasn't in the cards for him to sleep tonight, he decided to walk. He popped out of his queen-sized bed, sluggishly slid on his pajama pants and Timberland boots, and then headed for his miniature journey into the night. Alex stumbled forward at a sluggish pace, his feet dragging as the night pressed down on him. Each step felt heavier, as if the weight of the world was closing in around him. The distant sounds of campus life only seemed to amplify the growing unease in his chest. Suddenly, Alex heard the screeching of tires and a thunderous thump, as if a vehicle had lost control and collided with an unknown object. His heart immediately began to race. Frantically, he ran uphill toward the noise, hoping he didn't have to worry about saving a life tonight. His mind became flooded with all possible scenarios and the required composure he would need to have. He was an EMT for a living, so he knew what to do in an accident where he was demanded to perform life-saving actions. Still, tonight, he was not mentally prepared. An EMT would usually get a heads-up at least and a brief synopsis of what they are walking into. This was not the case. Alex saw a figure stumbling out of the car as he approached the scene. He couldn't make out if there were other vehicles involved. The car was halfway over the side of the road, but no tree or object was present that could have caused the uproar of the supposed impact. Confusion seized his thoughts. "Maybe an animal was hit, that poor bastard," Alex uttered, feeling somewhat relieved. He determined he should continue. The person may still require assistance. As he drew closer, the figure was now in clear view. It was a man. Tall, slender, dressed nicely in khaki pants and dress shoes from what Alex could see. The man was on both knees, hovering over what appeared to be a woman. Alex's pace slowly declined. The man lifted the woman, then flung her over his shoulder. Alex released a noticeable gasp, then immediately covered his mouth and held it with his other hand. Fear and concern enveloped him, and with blind instincts he threw himself on the ground, rolling over to the grass to avoid being seen by the man. Time stretched until finally the car sped off. Hesitantly, he gets on his feet and begins walking toward the scene. Alex needed to know what had happened. He wanted to assume the man had taken the girl with him, but his gut was telling him otherwise. People often called Alex a cynic in his professional and personal life. He always thought the worst of people and concluded that humans were duplicitous, selfish beings who could not and should never be given the benefit of the doubt. Although his outlook on life was unpopular, it had gotten him further than most because he depended very little on others. Alex could tell he had arrived at the scene of the accident by the tire marks. He began to fondle his pockets. "I know I have a flashlight in here," Alex declared. He was always prepared for anything, and a flashlight was one of the essential items. Got it," he exclaims. He removed the flashlight from his pockets and surveyed the area for anything. Perhaps the woman the man was carrying dropped some form of ID, or maybe the man left something behind. Alex's inquisitive mind craved the answers to all the questions floating in his head. His light landed on a peculiar pile of leaves down the hill. They were strategically placed, which seemed odd to Alex. He slowly goes down the steep hill, leaning slightly back to prevent falling. "Thank God for Timberlands," Alex whispers, grateful he chose boots and not slides tonight. He eventually reached the bottom of the hill and flashed a look of despair at the thought of returning to the top. A part of him hoped all this was not for nothing, but he instantly felt shame, because it wouldn't be good if he did find something. He found a long branch and began moving the leaves with it. To his surprise, there weren't as many leaves as it initially appeared to be. His heart jumped into his mouth. He dropped the flashlight and bent down, moving the leaves with both hands. And that was when he discovered her body. Her face was slightly bruised, and her hip and right hand looked displaced. Alex could feel his heart rate increase. He began to sweat, and he felt nauseous. He knew this woman. "What the hell, Luna?" he exclaims in disbelief. This was his cousin, who was a student at the college up the road. She would visit him periodically when she needed a break from her roommate. They were close for the most part. In a panic, Alex instinctively locks into EMT mode and checks for a pulse. None. He removed Luna's jacket and started CPR. He repeated this 5 times. Nothing. "Come on, Luna, come back to me, please," Alex pleads, while performing CPR one last time. But it was too late. Alex, holding Luna, lets out a haunting cry that could be heard for miles. He immediately began to blame himself. Had he not been afraid, he could have probably saved her life. He composed himself, took his cell phone out of his pocket and dialed 911. After one ring, a monotone voice spoke on the other end. 911, what is your emergency? Hello, I'd like to report a murder.
You've been listening to Guilty, Chapter 3, The Witness, by D. Whitelock. Follow D and stay tuned for the next chapter.